Today's youth need teachers, volunteers, and most of all, well, they need you. I'm Doug Edwards, and I'm going to be talking with real youth mentors and students to give you the knowledge you need to be the best youth worker possible. This is Youth Worker on Fire.
Oh, you're trying to bring me down and run me out of town. You're taking what you want, but you can't take my rhythm now. I'm walking to my own beat, just gonna be me. I'm not replicating nobody.
Hello, Youth Worker. This is Youth Worker on Fire. My name is Doug. We're going to start you off with a couple of things. If this reaches you before Christmas, you'll get this, or right before New Year's Eve or New Year's Day. This is kind of to set you up for the New Year's. Maybe a story you can use, something from my book. But first, I'm going to start off with a joke because some of you just need to be lighthearted. Remember, 31%. You help people become 31% smarter or 31% more productive. We can make them laugh or smile every day. So here's one for you. Youth is when you're allowed to stay up late on New Year's Eve. Middle age is when you're forced to. If you have kids, you get that. Or if you have teenagers and you're a youth worker, okay? Why did the man sprinkle sugar on his pillow on New Year's Eve? He wanted to start the year with sweet dreams. Oh, I don't know if you're laughing at that, but that made me chuckle. That's why I'm reading it to you. So this is talking about new beginnings, New Year's. I was reading in Ecclesiastes today. If you haven't read the book of Ecclesiastes, I suggest you do it. Here's the smartest guy, supposed to have been the smartest guy in the world. Solomon, the richest guy in the world. He's king number 3. There's Saul, there's David, there's Solomon. He writes Ecclesiastes kind of when he's really frustrated with all the things he's learned and seeing things aren't exactly the way he thought they would come out. But very good wisdom, very good wisdom. Part of it, you can kind of feel the sarcasm and the disappointment in him, but especially chapters 6 through 10. 6 through 10, amazing chapters for you to kind of see life in. If you've gone through anything in life, you'll kind of feel where he's coming from on some of this stuff. One verse is this, Ecclesiastes 9:11. I also saw something else here on earth. The fastest runner does not always win the race. Now, we all want fast runners. We want to be fast runners. But one thing I found in student ministry is that there's times you're going to sprint. There's times you're going to try to pace yourself. At least you should. And if you don't learn to pace yourself, then you're probably going to burn out quickly. Somebody set you up wrong. You set yourself up wrong. I've done all of that. I've done it right. I've done it wrong. I've done it in between. I've run the race quickly at different places and points. And usually when I ran too fast, and it's one thing to get a kick at the end of your run. If you've ever been a runner, and I was for quite a few years, since I was 14 years of age. But I started becoming a runner going into my high school years, right out of 8th grade. Decided, you know what, I need to really get in shape if I'm going to go on. So we're going to give you one of the chapters. We're going to talk about running the race. My wife set my book up with some really good quotes, and this one starts this way. At the end of the day, the position is just a position. A title is just a title, and those things come and go. It's really your essence and your values that are important. And that was from Queen Rania of Jordan. Queen Rania of Jordan. If the fishbowl effect is more than you can bear, and that's if you're in ministry, there's other types of things in life, but ministry, there's all kinds of pressures. I told someone probably a year ago, 2 years ago maybe, whatever you're going through, whatever your congregation is going through, your pastors feel that pressure and are being tested on every level possible because the evil one knows as well as you do, as well as God knows and protects us from these things when we lean on him and call out to him, that if we can kill the head, if you can cut off the head as some sayings have said, then you can disperse the body, destroy the body. Right after Jesus was killed, he even set his guys up, told them exactly what they were going to do, how it was going to be, and that he was going to rise again. They couldn't comprehend it. But if you're feeling that fishbowl effect and it's more than you can bear, then either get out now or put around you strong people who will hold to those commitments, that won't be afraid to tell you when you're out of line. They should be people who love you and you trust, and must also be who won't pull any punches to keep from possibly offending you. You are there to serve as a leader, not to be served, even though people will serve you. So the rules are different. If you want to be effective, the rules are different. One of the chapters, chapter 6, we're talking about a particular guy. It starts off with the slow burn, because the name of the book, my book, is Burn Up, Not Out, Believe, Understand, Reconcile, Nurture, Believe, Understand, Reconcile, Nurture. That stands for Burn, a student ministry fire builder's guidebook. Burn up, not out, because many people burn out, but very few know how to recover. And I was able to recover many, many times, not because of me, but because my church, who didn't even understand why, because I asked people after my time there was over, asked the people who set it in motion, because of a 3-month sabbatical that was required every 5 years. And when it wasn't required, bad things happened, or when they took it away a couple of times and then they'd reinstate it. But I got 4 full sabbaticals, and it changed my ability to recover. And so the slow burn, the steady run is a title of that chapter. Let's throw off everything that hinders and the sin that so easily entangles, and let's run with perseverance the race marked out for us. Hebrews 12:1. Page 49. This story, I love this story, but we'll start off with what I wrote. Student ministry is a fragile ecosystem. And if you've worked in it for any time at all, you know that. Except it just came to me one day. No one had ever told me that. I'd never heard that anywhere. But as I was doing some devotions, or maybe it was even when I was writing this book, I realized that it's an ecosystem. And ecosystem is defined as a biological community of interacting organisms and their physical environment. A community of interacting organisms and their physical environment. It's up to you to seek God's wisdom to help you balance this system. Some days you will have to work hard, and very hard, to make things work. Other days it will seem like even harder, longer work. Here is the legend of Cliff Young. Cliff Young, I love this story. The race does not always go to the fastest runner. And he goes on. He talks about the wind doesn't always go to the strongest soldier in a battle either. And we are both those things. We are runners and we are soldiers in God's army. Some days you will work hard. So, kind of a tortoise and hare story. He understood ecosystem. Melbourne, Australia hosts an annual 543.7 mile, which also is 875 kilometers, endurance race spanning from Sydney to Melbourne. It is a grueling event in which only world-class athletes compete. In 1983, Cliff Young showed up. He was 61 years old and wore his overalls and work boots. Cliff wasn't a spectator. He pinned on his race number and joined the other runners. The spectators, officials, and the press were awed and amused at this unlikely farmer. When asked if he truly believed that he could finish this 5-day expert race, let alone compete in it, he replied, "Yes, I can." See, I grew up on a farm where we couldn't afford horses or tractors, and the whole time I was growing up, whenever the storms would roll in, I'd have to go out and round up the sheep. We had 2,000 sheep on 2,000 acres. Sometimes I would have to run those sheep for 2 or 3 days. It took a long time, but I'd always catch them. I believe I can run this race. The race started, and Cliff was quickly left behind. except for those who watched him shuffle along in his boots, not in competitive style. The plan in this race was that one had to run about 18 hours a day and sleep 6 hours. But Cliff Young didn't know that. He jogged along all through the night. He had already planned that he was going to run the race 543.7 miles, I remind you, until he arrived at the finish line. And he did. But by the final night, Cliff had surpassed all the remaining runners. He was the first competitor to cross the finish line, and he set a new course record at 61 years of age in overalls and boots. The following year, Cliff came in seventh. Maybe he wasn't wearing his first place uniform. The young shuffle has become ultra athletes' tool as it is very efficient, and they skip the sleep. So he started a trend. There is more to Cliff's legacy, and you should look it up online. However, student ministry is overflowing with youth pastors and volunteers who are sprinters and bounce from one ministry to another or used it as a stepping stone to adult ministry. Some thought that they all had all the answers and looked great for a few or even more years. Then the bonfire was done. The fuel consumed, the burn over too quickly. They fall behind, wear out, or quit, picking up again somewhere also where they started over in another competition or blaze. But the way to build and run to the victory of student ministry and become an influencer to a changing, fast-paced generation is by becoming a fire builder. The young shuffler, the tortoise. To see progress and change, you must take ministry one step at a time and stay focused on the goals set and be committed to changing in for the long stretch. You must be committed for changing, for hanging in for the long stretch. It may take years, not days or even months, to see any finish line in sight. Are you willing to run without seeing the finish line banner? That takes good boots of faith. Are you prepped for the steady burn? That takes consistent Holy Spirit fuel. Have you considered taking the long haul? That takes a heavy-duty work truck called patience. Didn't sign up for that? Then look again at what God's intention may be for you. If it is the ministry you signed up for, He will hand you your number, help you keep the pace, not let your boot wear out, and fill in the space between you and the finish line. The reward is huge to those who endure and pay the price. Everything comes with a cost. Do not allow that price tag cost the sacrifice of your time with God or the sacrifice of your family's care and spiritual condition. Their marathoner knows how to take breaks, feed his body and his soul in between races. Taking some time off for a complete refreshing is as important as how long you race. The balance is not easy. I'm speaking from experience. I failed God, my family, and myself many times. I was the hare more than I was the tortoise. I only recovered each time through God's mercy and family forgiveness. I tried to not make the same mistakes again until I did. Then once again, I choose to pick up my Cliff Young bootstraps and take a breather, reevaluate, reboot, pun intended, and shuffle forward. You can always start again. If you are serious about your goal and whatever ministry you are called, I'm not at all suggesting that you work around the clock. I hate those all-night lock-ins. Are they really productive anyway? I just don't believe they are. And you cannot be on the clock 24/7. It takes time. The it takes time thing is true, and in the long run becomes productive. And I'm not saying that you won't face times when you will have to sprint from an emergency crisis or to avert a crisis, to which recovery for you is as important as the situation. However, when you know where you are is where you are supposed to be, all can fall in place and come together. Let me read that again. However, when you know where you are is where you are supposed to be, all can fall in place and come together. Ministry will be worth the run, as rewarding as prize and worth the burn. Run the race that you are designed to run and run it. Fuel your fire in all areas of your life so you can burn up and avoid burning out. You cannot think too big or ask too much from God, but you can't ask for too little or not even ask. Remember, God wants more for you than you want for yourself, immeasurably more than all we ask or imagine, according to his power that's at work within us, Ephesians 3:20. And that's the end of that chapter. In Ecclesiastes, in the 7th chapter before that. One thing I have learned, Solomon says, God made people good. Well, I hear that people say that all the time. God made people good. And that's a good thing to know, because he did. But they have found all kinds of ways to be bad. I'm sorry, that makes me laugh, because if you deal with students, they can do the best things one day and then just blow it and do the worst things another day. I had a kid call me up one time and he said, I want you to hear this before you hear it from somebody else. Here's what I did. And it was because someday they may hear it, and I didn't get permission to tell the story, but they let certain types of animals into they found a way to get into the school before school hours, or they left them in for a day or something like that, and they were roaming the hallways. And so, when they got there to school on that Monday, there was a big mess from these animals that they left in one particular building in the school, and they were in trouble. So, I almost wanted to chuckle and laugh, because it was so little compared to how many bad, really, really bad things some other people had done. But isn't it true that God made people good, but they have found all kinds of ways to be bad? There you go. You got some things for the new year that's coming up. Maybe you're going to be able to use this Cliff Young story, which is a true story. There's so much more to his story, and I was just so intrigued when I read it. So, youth workers and parents and grandparents and administrators, all you people, whoever's listening to this Youth Worker on Fire podcast, I wish you the best new year, the best Christmas, and year to come. So let this next one be your best one. Okay, this is Doug Edwards, and this is Youth Worker on Fire, and I'll see you next time.
You've been listening to the Youth Worker on Fire podcast. If you like what you hear, please subscribe and tell your friends. Also, leave a comment and tell us what you think. Stay tuned for more informative episodes.